We will now hear from speakers on this motion. Our first speaker is Nico Slobinsky in the chamber today.
Thank you. Boker Tov. Good morning. My name is Nico Slobinsky, and I'm speaking in favor of the IHRA motion on behalf of the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, the advocacy agent of the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver. I do so as a Jewish father who is alarmed about the world in which my children and all children are growing up. It pains me to speak to you today about anti-Semitism, the world's oldest hatred, but I can no longer keep silent. So why IHRA? The IHRA non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism provides policymakers, law enforcement, and community leaders with a tool to identify, understand, and combat contemporary forms of anti-Semitism in public life, the media, schools, the workplace, and in the religious sphere. IHRA is the consensus definition of anti-Semitism that best reflects lived experiences of Jews today. Developed by the IHRA Committee on Anti-Semitism, it is grounded in the research of the world's foremost experts on anti-Semitism and the Holocaust. And it is supported by the UN, the EU, and 30-plus countries, including the US and Canada. It is also being used by Ontario, British Columbia, Quebec, Alberta, Manitoba, and New Brunswick. On August 2, 2022, Statistics Canada released a police-reported hate crime data for 2021, revealing once again that Jews remain the most targeted religious group for hate in Canada. Incidents targeting the Jewish community grew dramatically by 47% since 2020 and cumulatively by 59% over the last 2 years. While the Jewish community roughly represents 1% of the population in Canada, members of the Jewish community were victims of 14% of all reported hate crimes in 2021. Statistically, Canadian Jews were more than 10 times more likely than any other Canadian religious minority to report being the target of a hate crime in this country. The Vancouver Police Department confirms that the Jewish community remains the most targeted religious minority for hate crimes also in our city, in Vancouver. Let this data sink in for a moment. Sounds uncomfortable, right? I know it does. It is also alarming. To effectively combat anti-Semitism, we first need to define it. I would like to share 3 reasons why the IHRA definition is the most effective tool in countering these dangerous trends. First, as both IHRA and the motion state, this is a non-legally binding definition which affirms that anti-Semitism may be criminal or non-criminal in nature. Most anti-Semitic acts, such as casual social media posts, are not criminal. Others, such as vandalism or threats of violence, are criminal. The IHRA definition in no way changes this distinction. Rather, it provides a guide for local officials to understand what constitutes anti-Semitism, with the definition stating that context must be considered. Second, the IHRA definition reflects the broadest consensus within the Jewish community here in Vancouver on anti-Semitism. It is seen in the support for this very same motion back in 2019 that was endorsed by more than 20 local Jewish organizations representing the membership of our community in this city, as well as the massive number of emails councillors have received from local residents supporting the motion. Third, the motion is a valuable tool in upholding freedom of expression. It is utterly false to suggest it equates criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. The definition states, and I quote, "Criticism of Israel similarly to that leveled against any other country cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic." To me, it's common sense. One can criticize a country without either denying its right to exist or the human rights of its citizens. Many Jews and Israelis do so. I do it too. The definition explicitly exonerates critics of Israel policies from false accusations of anti-Semitism. But calling for the destruction of the world's only Jewish majority country is indeed anti-Semitic, as is dehumanizing and demonizing its people. This vitriol often extends to Jewish Canadians, the vast majority of whom, and I quote an embryonic polling, shows that 9 in 10 Jewish Canadians see Israel as a core part of their identity. If critics of the motion oppose Israel's right to exist and reject the human rights of Israelis and of Jews, they should be honest about why they don't like the IHRA definition. Council must not allow such voices to derail this effort to combat growing racism in our city. To be clear, a non-legally binding definition doesn't criminalize these hateful opinions. While not all hate is criminal, all of it is worth condemning. City officials must be leaders in doing so. I urge this council to support this motion as a first step in a comprehensive effort to counter anti-Semitism and hate in all of its forms. There is, as you have just heard.
Sorry to interrupt, Nico. You're at time, but thank you for your
Thank you.
comments. Okay, we will now move to our next speaker. Oh, sorry. Apologies, 1 second. We have questions for the speaker. Councillor Kirby Young, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Nico, for speaking today. I have one question for you, and I think that you were probably starting to touch on it in your remarks before you finished. And that was yesterday when I introduced the motion, one of my fellow councillors asked, why not adopt another definition? Why not adopt, for example, a reference to the Jerusalem option? And I wonder if you could speak to why you don't support that and why this definition is important.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor. I don't know about other definitions, right? Even though I'm familiar with them, I can tell you that this definition is a definition that is supported by the vast majority of the organized Jewish community in this city, in this country, and in the world. This is a consensus definition that is rooted in more than 15 years of research, of collaboration between intergovernmental bodies, of Holocaust researchers, scholars, and legal experts. It's been adopted widely by more than 30 countries, including our country. It's been adopted, as I mentioned, by a number of provinces and territories in our country as well, and endorsed by the Canadian Human Rights Commission and the Canada Race Relations Foundation. I'll tell you even more. Our community here wrote to you in 2019, 20 community organizations that represent the vast majority of our voices in this city stood shoulder to shoulder asking for you to take a step to combat anti-Semitism in this city. And this is the definition that we are putting forward. It is up to our Jewish community to define what our oppression looks like.
Okay, and following up on that, just one clarification. You also said the Canadian Human Rights Commission and the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. Did I hear that correctly?
They refer to the definition on their websites. Yes, correct.
Okay. And just following up on that, because you referenced that this is supported widely by the organized Jewish community and referenced the 20 organizations, and obviously you have a large number of constituents that you support and serve. So do you believe that that reflects that you are the voice and that does reflect the vast populace of the Jewish community in Vancouver, in our city?
Yes, the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, as the advocacy agent of the Jewish Federation, acts on behalf of the organized Jewish community. I will not claim here for a moment that the Jewish community is a monolith, that all Jews think alike or speak alike, right? There's difference of opinion in our community, like in all communities. I'm sure there's difference of opinions within this chamber on many issues. But as a collective, when you look at the organizations that wrote to you in 2019, and you look at our synagogues, our schools, the Jewish Federation, CIJA, the Jewish Community Center, they all wrote to you asking you to adopt this definition of anti-Semitism as we define our own oppression and what racism against us looks like.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you both. Councillor Klassen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Slobinsky, for your remarks. We're going to be hearing a lot of diverging opinions today, obviously, and we've already had quite a bit of correspondence for and against this motion. It seems to me that a lot of the questions revolve around the expression similar to that leveled against any other country with regards to kind of criticism as Israel. How do we respond to those who feel that any criticism of Israel is perceived as being anti-Semitic?
Thank you for the question. Well, first, I would invite everybody who has an opinion like that to read the definition. The definition is a single document that is very clear in its intent and that provides 11 illustrative examples of what constitute and what does not constitute anti-Semitism. Right? So criticism of Israel that is leveled to impaired to any other country should not be considered as anti-Semitic. And I will say that those who oppose the definition, what they're really trying to do is they're trying to redefine what anti-Semitism looks like, so they can continue to get away with it. And so I invite everybody to read the definition, to read the examples, and many people criticize Israel and are not considered, not labeled as being anti-Semitic. Read the examples; it's in the examples. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you both. Okay, thank you, Nico, for your comments.
Thank you, everybody.
We're going to move on to our next speaker,